Hello, I am Crystal Reed Heath, the Chief Strategist and CEO of Capital Consulting Strategies. I hope that you all have had a wonderful week so far. And so today we are continuing our discussion from last week, which really is how to finish 2018 strong and to have a successful 2019. So as a quick reminder, Capital Consulting Strategies is a premier strategy consulting firm. We're based in Columbia, South Carolina, but we provide national consultation. And we specialize in political, business, and marketing strategy. If you have not done so already, please follow us on YouTube. Simply Google Capital Consulting Strategies and we'll pop right up. But then also, if you've not subscribed to our monthly newsletter, visit our website at mycapitalconsulting.com. We provide strategy tips and, of course, political, business, and marketing strategy, but also provide insight in those areas as well. So, last reminder, if you've not seen our previous episodes, you can visit our YouTube channel and check them out there. So as I mentioned, this is a continuation from last week. So we've given lots of discussion about how you finish 2018 strong and start 2019 strong. So today, this is the beginning of a two-part series, and next week we'll conclude our series by really focusing specifically on the key considerations for 2019 on how do you start the year off extremely well. But today we're speaking of two specific areas. So the first, we're looking at doing what I call an after-action review, and we're analyzing our marketing plan from 2018. Hopefully you had a marketing plan. If not, we'll talk about how you can still measure your effectiveness for the year. But then also we'll look at specific components for objectives. So in previous series, we've talked about what SMART objectives were. When we get to that session of our strategy session today, I'll elaborate that a little more specifically, but again, visit our YouTube channel for specific training on how to develop SMART objectives. And then we'll also talk about strategies and the appropriate budget that you assigned for this year to make sure that you met your objectives when we're looking at evaluating your success for the year. And then we'll look at your target audiences and messages today. And then we'll also look at your conversion and ROI, or return on investment rates. And then we'll also look at your effectiveness. Jumping ahead for 2019, we'll talk about today this evaluation, but then we'll also look at your vision, mission, and goals. So if you've looked at the research and you've analyzed your effectiveness, you may decide that 2019 is a year that you want to pivot. For us, we'll be pivoting in 2019. Heretofore, we've primarily worked with individuals to lead their community change efforts. So for political individuals, that may have been helping them lead their political campaigns. For businesses, that may have been writing their business plans or their marketing plans individually. And then also on the marketing side, that could have been for a nonprofit, or it could have been helping them actually implement their marketing plan and strategy. We're still doing the same great things we did last year, or this year rather, but we're going to pivot and focus our efforts on instituting macro-systemic change. What that means is that we'll primarily be consulting with municipalities, state governments, and doing some federal contracting work. And occasionally we'll still do some individual consulting in order to impact the greatest change. So if you're like us and you're pivoting in 2019, then you'll want to make sure that your objectives are aligned with your strategic goals. And then we'll look at revamping and devising a new strategy and a new budget to implement your plan for the year. And then we'll talk about targets, and then help you develop a sales and messaging strategy. If you have questions as we are going along, please comment on the Facebook Live session, and I will respond verbally. I won't type back to you, but I'll respond verbally. So without further ado, we'll get straight to it. So in previous sessions, we've talked about the importance of developing objectives. I'm a firm believer that an objective without a measurable goal is just wishful thinking. And so in previous sessions, we talked about SMART objectives: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely objectives. And so when you're analyzing your plan from 2018, you want to go back and look specifically, and this is really why it's important to have had a marketing plan. But if you don't have a marketing plan, and this isn't written down somewhere, go back and look at all of the outreach events that you visited. Go back and look at your website presence, look at your social media if you use social media. Looked at any possible external communications you sent, and even some internal communications amongst your staff, to see really what were your goals for the year. And hopefully, like I said, it's written down somewhere that you can measure it and that you can look at the effectiveness of your overall plan. So after you've looked at your objectives, then you want to look specifically at the strategies that you use to implement your objectives. So when I think about strategies, we use them to implement them, and they're the tactical level as to how you execute an objective. So it's important that with your strategies, even if you had a shoestring budget, that it costs something. Even if you don't have a large marketing staff, or if you didn't allocate a lot of money, it either costed you financially or it costed you time-wise. So look at, this is really important when you're assessing your strategies, because you could have had really good objectives, but you may not have had the budget this year to implement your strategies, and that will be important. So part of strategic planning is not just having specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely objectives. It's really focusing on that realistic piece. So if you had an objective this year that you wanted to increase your market share or your target audience sales by 20%, but you assigned a marketing budget to that, that perhaps may not have been a realistic goal unless you had brand ambassadors or people that were speaking on your behalf at no cost. That perhaps may not have been a realistic objective. So when you're looking at your effectiveness and the strategies that you used this year, you'll want to do this for each of the platforms or each of the avenues that you may have used. So if you use social media, look at the platforms that you used, particularly Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. It has the ability to do the analytics component of it. So it can tell you very specifically and very granularly who your target audience was. It can even tell you specifically what time people view your posts. It can tell you demographics, age, geographical location. All of that information is really important, right? So if your strategy was that you wanted to reach 20% of your target audience via Facebook, and you wanted to target, I'm just going to say California and Washington State, but if you go back and you look at your plan from last year and your social media, and you download the metrics, and you see that although you had good social media presence, but you didn't target those areas. You may have seen that most of your followers came from the East Coast, came from Florida, or came from Texas. But if your objective was specific, that you wanted to reach your target audience in California, and you look at the results that you were able to achieve, it may be that you may need to tweak your analytics and tweak your messaging that you've done and do some targeted ads on Facebook or Instagram. Or it may be that you've just not messaged appropriately and set the appropriate objectives. So it's really important that you're not just looking at quantifying your social media by the number of likes, follows, views. That's important. But if your specific strategy was to reach a specific target audience and you didn't do that, it will be important to know that for when you're planning for 2019, because that will be really important. Or inversely, you may have thought that you wanted to target one particular group, but you actually gained more sales or more traction in a different area. That may be a key consideration for 2019 as you're looking at your vision, mission, and goals, and you'll want to make sure consistently that your strategy actually aligns with what you've done. So, if you think you sell, let's say, widgets, that's what you sell. ABC company sells widgets, but you go back and you look at your sales for the year, and you actually don't sell widgets, you sell, and I'm making this up, tea. Then you may need to look at your service and your product offerings, because if 90% of your revenue for the year came from one particular line of service, this is a really good time to look at your strategic vision and goals for your organization to see, do you still want to continue producing widgets, or do you want to pivot to a more profitable line of service and consider another area where you may have neglected before? For your email marketing, this is really important as well. So very similar to social media platforms, you can actually measure the response rate, you can measure the open rate. And this is really important when you're looking at the data, because if, let's say, you have a platform, or you have a following list of 10,000 people on an email marketing platform like Emma or MailChimp or iContact or Constant Contact, one of those platforms, but your open rate is 5%. That's not bad per se, depending on what your objective was and how old your list is. So it may be that when you're planning for 2019, you may need to go back and actually qualify and further cultivate that email list and look at having a series of re-engagement emails for individuals, either to consciously opt back into receiving your communications or to gradually purge and remove individuals from your list that have not been responding. I'm a firm believer of quality over quantity. Certainly, we all would love to have email lists that are 500,000 people, but if your response rate is slim to none, it's expensive. You're paying for people on your email platform that aren't opening it, but then also, more importantly, you're perhaps offending an individual, particularly if they did not opt in. So tons of companies, you can buy email addresses. I generally don't suggest that. I suggest that you organically grow your list, and in subsequent sessions we can talk about how to do that. But you want to make sure that you're talking to the right people at the right time and that you have the right message. So go back, look at your email marketing, look at your effectiveness. And again, if your email list was not effective and you didn't have that many people open it, or you didn't have a lot of people follow up from your email looking at your conversion rate, it may be time to purge and clean your list. Your website, when I think about it, it really is the primary platform in which all of these other methods, so social media, traditional website, outreach, others, that really is the hub, or should be the hub, of your marketing efforts. So when I think about the website, it really should do two things. It should be aesthetically pleasing or pretty, but then also it should work for you. It should be something that automatically generates leads for you, and also that helps you get in front of your target audience quicker. But then also, it should also be a hub spot for all of your other strategies or your platforms that you use. So think about this year, how did you drive traffic to your website? You could use a free tool called Google Analytics, which will tell you the people that visited, how long they visited your website. It'll tell you even the pages they visit, how long they're on a certain page, and the conversion rate. So you want to go back and look at the effectiveness of that and look at, is your website working for you? If your website is not making you money, it may be time to revamp and overhaul your website for 2019. So go back and look at that. And for each one of these that I'm mentioning, in subsequent sessions, I'll do a deeper dive in each of these areas. But today, I'm just giving you some key nuggets for you to consider when you're analyzing your effectiveness for the year. And then outreach. I love outreach events. And so with outreach, you have to be purposeful with it. So there are 1,000,000,001 events that you could possibly go to. But when you're evaluating your performance this year, you want to look at, did you attend the right events? If you send someone on your behalf, did the person perform and meet the metrics that you established in their performance plan? Were you able to connect effectively with the people at an outreach event? If you sponsored a conference or a seminar or a training as a vendor, did you receive any return on that? Were you able to gain any qualified leads? And don't just look at the number of events that you attended, but look at the result of that. You could have attended 100 events this year, which is a lot. That's about 8 a month or 2 a week. But if by attending those outreach events, if you weren't either able to pre-qualify a prospect or gain a relationship, which ultimately led to a sale, you may want to reconsider as you're developing your marketing plan and business plan for next year, whether or not you continue to sponsor or go to that particular event. I consider professional development and training as a core component of a business. I'm a lifelong learner. As a licensed master social worker, we're required to get continuing educational credits every 2 years. You're required to get 30 hours. Beyond that, as an entrepreneur, it is important that you are constantly investing in yourself and investing in your people, because that ultimately produces the greatest results for your clients. So it's important that you do that and that you have a line item budget for that. But I want you to be purposeful. I don't want you to just go to outreach events and do trainings. It should somehow increase your bottom line. So think about that critically when you're allocating that budget next year. And then there could be others, events that you did, or other tactics or strategies that you did. So go back and look at that very specifically. And when you're looking at other possible things that you did, look at what did you get out of it? Did you get exposure? Did you get new prospects? Did you qualify more people? Did you gain brand awareness? Were you able to connect with a high-level prospect? But then also look at the effectiveness of each of these strategies. And there are a plethora of strategies that we could go through, but suffice it to say, those are the key things that you should consider when you're evaluating the effectiveness of your strategies. And then thirdly, your target audiences and your messages. So if you're like us, we have multiple target audiences as we that cater to a new political, business, and marketing strategy. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to pivot in 2019 to still offer those same great services. But when we talk about strategies and your objectives, it's important that you go back and you critically look at who did you think your target audience was, and then versus who actually was your target audience. And then what budget did you assign to communicate with that particular target audience? And what message did you convey? So as you're going back and you're looking at your analytics, it could have been perhaps that you were able to connect with the right people, which is possible. But it could have been you were not communicating clearly, or you were communicating the wrong message. So in our example, if I'm doing political strategy, that's a different service offering. So campaign strategy, campaign research, development of strategic plans, all of those lines of services fall underneath that particular area. But I wouldn't communicate those lines of service to a nonprofit that would come to me for the development of a board plan or a strategic plan, not a political outreach plan. So it's important that you have the right message, and it's important that you've done some testing when it's not too late to do testing. The quickest way to find out what people want is to ask. So go back and ask your customers, ask your clients, ask people who considered doing business with you but didn't. Hopefully you would have done this before now, but it's not too late to do that. Do a quick poll. We offer polling services, both live calling and automated calls that can help you communicate your message really quickly. Visit mycapitalconsulting.com for more information and click on the business development page. We're also, by the way, offering a promotion where we'll help you send out your messaging really quickly, and it's listed on the mycapitalconsulting.com/business development. But there are a number of ways that you could communicate with your target audience. Ask them what services did they like. Ask your target audience or your clients what messages resonated with them. That's really important. So you could be spending tons of cash on advertising and you could be articulating the wrong message. So that is something that you really want to consider when you're going into 2019, because you don't want to communicate something inappropriately. And by inappropriate, I mean by not having the appropriate message and it doesn't resonate. 3 C's of communication: clear, consistent, compelling communication. If you confuse people, you lose them. So be clear, to the point, be concise, but also make sure that you're communicating the right message. Conversion and ROI, or return on investment. I've alluded to some of these points in social media and email marketing and your website. You should have tracked, and if you haven't, go back and try to recreate the information in the data because it exists somewhere. But hopefully you've tracked in 2018 your return on investment. So having numbers like CPL, or cost per lead, or CPC, cost per click. And so it's important to know, what is the cost of a qualified lead? Was it an opportunity cost if you went to an outreach event? So don't just factor in things like attendance at a conference, transportation, lodging, food. Also consider the time value of money. What did it cost you to go to that event? And then what result was able to be achieved? How many prospects were you able to get in front of? How many appointments were you able to book? And then how many appointments that you were able to book, how many clients resulted in that, or prospective clients resulted from that. And so that's really important. So if you're spending even just 1 penny, you should be measuring the things that I mentioned before: CPC, cost per click, CPL, cost per lead, and you should be looking very critically at the strategies, because you can have great objectives, and we could help you write a phenomenal strategic plan or marketing plan. But without fundamentally understanding your ROI and your ability to convert that, all of those efforts are for naught. So where you've had low ROI rates, or you may find that you may have landed a $10,000 contract, but it cost you $9,000 to do that. You may want to look at perhaps either providing that line of service or doing something to increase your profit margin, or minimizing the cost to get a better return on your investment. And then even in some instances, perhaps eliminating or consolidating lines of service which aren't that profitable. And then effectiveness. So as we've been kind of going along through our discussion today, I've been talking about the effectiveness for each of the areas. So conversion, your target audience, your strategies, your objectives. It really all boils down to this, which is when you're looking at effectiveness, what did you say you were going to do versus what did you actually do? And then that's marked with an asterisk. So you may have intended to increase your sales by 20% from the previous fiscal year, or you may have had a specific target of reaching specific target audiences, or you may have had a specific objective about gaining brand exposure, or you may have had a specific, and we can go on and on and on. But it ultimately boils down to, did you do what you were saying you were going to do? And then taking it a step further. If you did what you said you were going to do, how effective was what you did of what you said you were going to do? Meaning, what were the results of what you actually accomplished? That's a lot to consider. We would be most delighted to help you look at your effectiveness for 2018, because that will be the core for what you do in 2019. And so I'll actually come back over to this side so we can see it a little better. When we're looking at planning for 2019, all of what we discussed, objectives, strategies, target audience, conversion, ROI, effectiveness, these are all of your components for the first thing that you'll do for your evaluation for 2018. Taking those key considerations, you'll want to go back and perhaps realign your vision, mission, and goals. As I mentioned earlier, now we've had some discussion, you've got a better idea about what I meant about perhaps realigning what it was you intended to do with your company or your organization or your initiative. But if you found that you were ineffective with a particular target audience, or that you need to change your messaging, it may be time to incorporate that into your new vision. As I mentioned in the earlier example, you may think that you sell widgets. Without clearly understanding what your vision is, you can't develop effective mission and goals. You can't, because your objectives are directly tied to what you envision. When I founded my company in 2008, it was primarily a political consulting company. So we only did advocacy, campaign analysis, and legislative research. That's all we did. And the objective of my company then, and it's still the core of my company, was that people should come before politics. And then I wanted my company to be a place where we would advocate for organizations and individuals that otherwise wouldn't have a voice in our political systems. That was the driving message. I didn't want to be just another political consulting company that advocated or that lobbied, because they're a dime a dozen. So your vision will drive everything that you do. And so take some time to critically think about what your vision was for 2018. And then after you've looked at all this analysis and this research, you may need to realign your vision and appropriately align your goals to match your vision, because your goals and your objectives are a byproduct of your vision. Once you figured out who you are, what you want to do, now it's time to go back and actually have these strategies. After you've done the analysis from 2018 of these strategies, then it's time to develop strategies and tactical objectives to help you implement your goals at a higher level. And then it's important that you assign the appropriate budget to do this. So make sure, as we've said before, you can have, and we can help you write a phenomenal marketing and strategic plan. But if you don't appropriately assign a budget, even if it's time. So if you're just if you're a solopreneur, which is okay, I shouldn't say just, but if you're a solopreneur, meaning a one-person entrepreneur, and you don't assign dollars, but you assign time, make sure that you assign the appropriate budget or time to meet your strategies. Remember, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely, smart. make sure that we do that. And then make sure that you give thoughtful consideration to who you want to target for 2019. And not just target audience, but which of your product offerings or your service offerings do you want to highlight? When you're putting together your marketing plan, consider what are your promotions for each month? What are you offering? You may have quarterly objectives. So when I plan, I have quarterly objectives where we focus on a particular service offering for the quarter. And at the end of each quarter, I evaluate my effectiveness in meeting those goals. And if we were effective the previous quarter, I looked at what went well. If we weren't as effective as we thought we would be, well, then I look at what could we do better? What can be done more efficient? Is it we selected the inappropriate target? Is it that we completely had the wrong target? Those are things to consider. And so if we did really well, then we duplicate that performance in the next quarter. And so you would want to do the same thing with your marketing or strategic plan as well. And then lastly, I've kind of begun alluding to this, your sales and marketing strategy. So the purpose of marketing, it has multiple reasons, but one of the primary reasons is to increase brand awareness, meaning when people have a need for something, they think of you, your organization, or your initiative. But then ultimately, it is to drive sales. You won't be in business for long if you can't sell something. And even if you're a nonprofit, you may tell me, well, Crystal, we don't sell. Yes, you do. You sell your initiative, you sell your idea, you sell the vision of your company. You may not sell a product per se, you may not sell a tangible product, but you're selling your vision so that people buy into, whether financially or emotionally, but people buy into your idea so that you can pay staff and pay overhead. And so we all sell. And so think about that. And this is a bonus that I hadn't planned on talking about. So nonprofits think, and I've had some, I'm not going to generalize, some nonprofits think that you can't generate profit. Well, when I look at an example like a Goodwill, that's a good example of a great organization that does a lot of good work. Goodwill is indeed a nonprofit organization, but they also have a for-profit part of their company in which the profits which are generated are distributed back into the company and their people from their stores that they have. And so I think they're called Hope stores, but they're stores where they're selling to the general public, generates profit to allow them to put people back to work. So they're basically reinvesting in their people. And the same may be true for your nonprofit. So think about that. Think about what your sales objectives are. Again, still use SMART objectives. And then think about what your messaging strategy is going to be. All of these are aligned together. So your evaluation is your basis for your plan for 2019. Your vision is paramount and tantamount to a successful plan for 2019. And then your objectives will set the pace as to how you'll implement those goals. And then your strategies and your budget that you assign, whether financial or otherwise, will help you implement your objectives. And then this is integrated within your targets. And then ultimately, this will help you drive sales. So they're not mutually exclusive. So don't consider these as silos. So I hope that today you found this very helpful and that you'll consider these key components when you're planning for 2018 or evaluating for 2018 and then planning for 2019. As mentioned before, we would be delighted to help you develop your marketing strategy for 2019. It's not too late to do that. We're offering that promotion through December 15th. So send us an email at info at mycapitalconsulting.com to redeem that promotion. Just put marketing 15 in the email. And then also we'd be happy to do an analysis of your efforts for 2018. And then lastly, we would also be delighted to help you as you're going through and analyzing your messages for the year to help you send out some targeted communication through our direct mail partners and then also through our call center. If you have any questions, give us a call at 803-404-8367. Next week, we'll talk more specifically about some of these key considerations, and we'll break down some of the larger concepts that we discussed with strategies. So without further ado, I hope that you have a great weekend. Look forward to talking with you next week.